Hansbrough
and gets
comes
another
right
rebound.
back in for another rebound. Watch out. He took a shot to the face.
Welcome to episode 4 of Tobacco Road Podcast. Today we got a very special guest coming on, Duke legend, NBA All-Star Grant Hill. Looking forward to that. We're going to start off talking about what's been going on with UNC and Duke the past few weeks. UNC had a few bumps in the road. We took an L to Wofford, which was tough, and we got a win against Ohio State, and struggled against Wake Forest, but ultimately got the win. So here we are.
So Tyler, I'll ask you with the loss to Wofford and winning over Ohio State and Wake in these last few weeks, where you feel like you guys are at? You know, you beat some pretty good teams in Ohio State and Wake Forest, but then lose to Wofford at home. Where do you feel like the team is? I know you guys got a mix of, you know, different upperclassmen and some younger guys. But what do you think it's going to look like for you guys as you roll into ACC season now?
Well, obviously the Wofford loss was tough. You know, I think turnovers are kind of a key factor in our losses this year. So I think, you know, if you watch the games, I could even hear it in the Ohio State game. I can hear Coach Williams yelling, "Make the easy play." And I think that's something that we've got to do as a team, and just kind of listen to that and kind of seeing what Coach Williams was talking about. But with the Wofford loss, you know, I listened to Coach Williams' press conference after the game. You know, we've got to show up and play everybody. And, you know, just because you wear North Carolina, it doesn't guarantee you a victory. And so Wofford came out, beat us at home. It was tough for us, kind of woke us up. We went down to New Orleans, you know, ate the good food. Then we played well against Ohio State, had a good game. I think Cam Johnson came out and played really well. I think he's a key. I think that's somebody off the bench that's given us some depth, which we've kind of been having a little issue with. But, you know, against Wake Forest, when I watched the game, and I felt like Wake Forest just competed better than us. I think they ran more than us, that's for sure, which is our game, trying to get fast break points. I think they even beat us in fast break points. And I listened to Coach Williams talk after the game. You know, it just sounds like it was an intensity thing and just bringing it every night and competing.
So another question for you, Tyler, is, you know, as we talked about last episode, this Christmas break period where the players, you know, aren't in the dorms anymore. It's very quiet. You know, during the time we had that episode, they were probably in exam week. Now you got another week that leads up and past New Year's. Do you think them going through that lull period where it's just practice and not playing a game, do you think that could have contributed to you guys' loss to Wofford maybe?
You know, I think it could have. You know, I think, you know, what you said with Coach K about don't go home before the break. I think some guys may have went home. And not only did they go home early, they probably planned early. But, yeah, I think that's a tough time, like we had said. And unfortunately, Wofford came in and gave us an L. But, you know, it's a tough one, and obviously it wakes us up. And, you know, it makes us practice harder, makes us see what we're looking at, see what we can do, what we can fix before this ACC play starts. And watching the Wake game, I still think there's a lot of improvements to be made. But, you know, I think once these freshmen like Jalik and some of these freshmen big get a little more experience and get a little more comfortable, I think they're going to really help us. And I think that's going to be a big key to us going on down the road in ACC play.
Yeah, so, and we both know that, you know, during this time, obviously you're not trying to lose, but, you know, everything's not going to be, you know, all copacetic as you run through your season, or especially as you get into ACC season. Unless you have this unbelievably spectacular team, you know, you're going to run into some bumps in the road. And, you know, for a team like UNC who's got some younger guys that play, you know, they may have not seen this kind of competition, or they haven't. So to know the kind of level that you need to play at, you know, and Wofford is not an ACC team, you know, unranked team, but they still have good players that are hyped up and, you know, jacked up to play a team like UNC. So, you know, as a loss like that is something that'll definitely help them moving forward. As we as we talk about UNC and what they got coming up. So during this time since our last podcast, Duke has gone 2-0. They had wins over Evansville and Florida State. Evansville was a blowout basically. I remember I was up at Duke during that time, training a bit, and sat in some meetings. And Coach K was really emphasizing he wanted his team to, his words exactly. Let's have a game. Let's have a game where we're on top of our stuff offensively, which they have, basically been the whole year. But then defensively, let's have from the start of the game to the end of the game, let's have a defensive effort that we're going to be proud of. Let's play consistently on the defensive end. That's been one of their troubles this season so far, is not, they've shown their ability to be a very special defensive team at times, but couldn't really sustain it. So, when you look at a loss like they had against Boston College, they're just playing with fire. They're coming out and scoring the basketball, just couldn't get any stops. So, against Evansville, it was very apparent that they had that in mind and sent themselves off to the break with a dominating victory. And then just last week, or just over the weekend, they play a team like Florida State, who was ranked in the top 25. And I was actually working the game. I was working IMG Network Radio and sat on the floor. And it was, I'll tell you, Tyler, it was one of those special ACC games, man. It was, I was working, but I almost forgot that I was, working. It was high energy. You had some of the students back, but then you also had a whole bunch of people, who had bought tickets and come from everywhere to come to this game. And it was jam-packed. It was, Tyler, you know these games, man. Like it was one of those classic games. And honestly, either team couldn't stop each other. Florida State had guys, had some career games. They're shooting threes from 35 feet, nailing them. And we all, if you look it up, Marvin Bagley had his most special game. He had 32 points, 21 rebounds. And he was dominant. But, it came down to the end.
That's impressive. And, I watched the Evansville game, and I knew you guys would just railroad them. But, I think you guys really bought into the defense. I saw some bigs taking some charges, and obviously I was pulling for Evansville. But, like you had said, it looked like they had really bought into the defense and really trying to grow. But Florida State, when you play Florida State, they always come out for a battle. You always feel like you've been in a 12-round fist fight whenever you play Florida State for some reason.
So, and what kind of players Florida State recruits. Like, it's always, long, athletic. They usually they do a really good job of recruiting guys from Africa, and they come over and, they coach them up, man. And you got these long, athletic guys at the rim who, every time you go to the rim, you're looking for them. They're great rim protectors. Athletic is actually get the basketball, and if you're around the rim, watch your head. So I'm sure you had to go up against that a lot.
When Florida State comes to town, they always have athletic bigs. They're always physical, and for some reason, I feel like the refs just let the players play.
Yeah, and
I just feel like it's a physical knockdown, drag-out brawl whenever you play Florida State. So, it's a tough game whenever you play them.
Yeah, so Duke comes down to the last minutes there. Trayvon Duvall, who was in foul trouble, and Duke had a few players in foul trouble throughout the game. And, I remember Coach, I was sitting right behind the bench. He gets his fourth foul on I believe it was he hits a guy off a screen on defense, and they called a push. It was, I don't know if it was a good call or not, but he comes to the bench, and Coach K is about to send him back out, and he says, play like you don't have any fouls. Like he didn't want – when you get in foul trouble, it takes your aggressiveness away. You know all about this. Like it just you on both ends, right? You don't on the offensive end, you don't want to pick up an offensive foul, and then on defense, like you don't want to touch anybody. So but Coach K's advice to him was play like you don't have fouls. Look, because we'd rather you go out there, play with aggressiveness, and make some plays that you're capable of making, and then say if you do get a foul, well, at least maybe one of those plays is something that will take us over the top, or be one of the reasons that we do win the game. So, he took that advice. He came down. He hit a 3-pointer with a couple minutes left, which isn't one of his strong points. He went to the rim a couple times with some finishes and played special. And then, like we talked about, Marvin Bagley was special, but it was just whoever would have lost that game. Just both teams were deserving of winning. So it was fun to be in the building for that game. So
yeah, and I think being in foul trouble is almost more mental than anything.
Yeah,
because being in foul trouble, it takes you out of your game and makes you play passive. I think that was great advice, and obviously showed a lot of maturity to stay with it and play your game instead of try to shy away from making big plays.
It's a big mental toughness thing that you got to deal with. And coming from a freshman, I was pretty impressed with that. So I think both teams will be fine as they go forward. It's early here in the ACC season, and Tyler, how it can get, but you learn along the way. But it's all leading up to February 8th when they match up in Chapel Hill, man. That's what we're looking forward to.
Both teams are developing well, and we'll see what happens.
And coming up for Duke, we got NC State in Raleigh, so that should be a lot of fun. Always loud there, and then UNC's got both Florida State and Virginia coming up. And Tyler, you know how much those two games on the road as well. So how difficult all those stadiums can be, and especially I believe it was the RBC Center we played, but where NC State plays. But how loud it can get in there.
Definitely, both road games for UNC. We got to show up and play. Going to be tough atmospheres. But as you guys head over to State, I will say this as a UNC fan, it's difficult. Who do you pull for? Do you pull for Duke? Do you pull for State? We hate both of them. But I'll say this, I hate State more than I hate Duke. So I'm not going to be pulling for you guys, but I always enjoy a State loss.
All right, now on the Tobacco Road podcast, one of my childhood heroes, an All-American at Duke, Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. It's a long list here. Two-time national champion, number 33, retired at Duke. In the NBA, a co-rookie of the year with Jason Kidd, I believe. I was still very young then. And a multiple-time All-NBA player, 7-time NBA All-Star, and current host of NBA Inside Stuff. And there is some stuff that I left out, but we gotta ask some questions here. So everyone, Grant Hill, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, no, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's been awesome. I mentioned Inside Stuff. I watch your show, and I remember during the summertime having an episode with Boston Celtics Jason Tatum, and we all seen what he's been able to do thus far in the season. So we welcome you, man, and we appreciate you having you on. And so I want to ask you. So I just saw you the other day at Duke, right? And we were there sitting there for the Florida State game, and we'll talk about that. You as a young, 17-year-old, 16-year-old in high school, what was it that brought you to Duke? What was it that made you want to come and be a Blue Devil?
Well, I mean, it was ultimately Coach K at first. I must confess that, growing up, I was a Georgetown and a North Carolina fan.
Mm-hmm.
And in part because the first game that I recalled watching was the final NCAA championship game in 1982.
Yep.
Michael Jordan hit the shot against Georgetown. And so we had just bought a Betamax at our house. And my parents had redone the basement, put up one of these little big screens. It was kind of fancy back in 1982. a little dated now. But so that was the first thing we recorded was that game. So not only did I watch it, and not only was it a classic game with a great finish, but I watched it over and over and over again. So that's what kind of really had me, wanting to play basketball. So I followed both of those programs. In Georgetown, we lived in the D.C. area, had Georgetown season tickets, and then Carolina I watched on TV. So I obviously was aware of Duke and certainly the Johnny Dawkins and Mark Allery, Tommy Amaker, Jay Billis crew, Dave Henderson, and that run they had, 84 to 86. But then all of a sudden I started getting recruited. And, as I sort of learned more about Coach K and got to know him through the recruiting process and then met him a few times in person, he really, he won me over. And obviously, being on campus and just sort of being at Duke, I think all of that ultimately, it just was the right fit. But really it was Coach K and just really believing in him and his vision.
Yeah. So that answer that you gave is like the exact answer that I would give, right? So it's hard. It's hard to say no to him, right? It's like a really hard thing to do, as I remember like being in the same situation, him sitting in my dining room with Coach Dawkins, who's, was my assistant coach at Duke, and him telling me that I think you should come to Duke, be an All-American, get your jersey retired, and you should be just like Grant Hill, right? And,
wow.
I told you this just before we came on here. It's like I used to be that kid in second grade. I got this picture at my mom's house of me in Filas, right? Red, white, and blue Filas. And I used to watch Grant Hill on the Pistons. I didn't really know much of Duke because I might have been like 5, 6 years old then. But, as when you were playing for the Pistons, I used to wear your shoes. And so when Coach K tells me that, I'm like, well, Grant Hill's turned out pretty well. So why wouldn't I go to Duke and want to follow his footsteps? So that's pretty cool.
Funny. Well, first of all, hopefully he's not using my name anymore. I'm sure these young kids have no idea who I am. And second of all, you're making me feel old because you just turned 30. Is that correct?
I did. I had my 30th birthday, but I'm mentally young though. I'm still, I keep it young. I try to keep it, even my body may feel like a 30, sometimes 35, but I try to keep it young. And,
how do you think I feel? You're talking all this stuff when you were a little kid and you had my shoes. You're saying you feel young at 30. Imagine how I feel. Well, I always say, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were?
That's true. That's a great saying, man. We're learning things from Grant Hill here on the Tobacco Road podcast, man. And Tyler, I'll ask you. So Grant mentioned watching Carolina in '82 championship, and looking up to them. Imagine Grant Hill as a North Carolina Tar Heel, and I believe it. I looked it up. So your dad, did he want you to go to Carolina? Is that true?
Yeah, I think my dad, he was always a Carolina fan, and then my mom was a Georgetown fan. And that was, he loved Dean Smith and certainly that program. And so a little bit of that, I'm sure, rubbed off on me before I saw the light.
Yeah.
Grant, we would have loved to have you. And now that asks me, what are your thoughts on Dean Smith and how he recruited you and what type of coach you thought he was? And, obviously he's pretty much the godfather of UNC basketball.
Yeah, no, he Coach Smith was just a remarkable coach, a remarkable human being, and it was great to get to know him and obviously during the recruiting process. And one of the hardest things, Tyler, was after I made my official visit to Duke, he came in for a home visit, and then eventually after that, having to call him and tell him that, I was intending to go to Duke. But I enjoyed watching him from afar, competing against him. I think, he was the standard. I mean, he was the gold standard in terms of coaching. And, Coach K maybe is in that position now, but was certainly pursuing him back during, our time in the early 90s. It's funny. There are some differences in terms of the style and the approach, but there's also a lot of similarities. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a heated rivalry, and we love to beat each other, and we've all lived through that rivalry, and I think everyone who's listening understands just how intense it is. But there was always a great deal of respect that I had for him. And I think all of us as Dukies, as much as we were sort of trying to, capture or catch North Carolina, that was the standard, at least from our standpoint, and we wanted to beat them. There was certainly a lot of respect for Coach Smith and his legacy and what he had done.
Definitely. Hey, was there ever any chippy moments in a UNC game that you can recall? Any times where you wanted to go at somebody, or there was things got a little questionable?
Right, because we got to ask that question, because this is the basic origin of this podcast. Is how this thing started. Is an altercation. So we typically ask our guests, is there any specific moment that may be similar to ours? It's hard to replicate ours, but similar to ours.
Well, I admire, first of all, how you guys have put that behind you and work well together here on this podcast. Maybe I should admire you, Tyler.
Definitely,
and more than my guy Gerald. But yeah, I mean, the rival. It's interesting. I mean, you guys obviously came later, but it was heated. I'll say this first of all. Brian Reese graduated '94, same class as me. I had known Brian from high school, freshman year in high school, and we were friends. We were good friends. I lived in Northern Virginia. He lived in the Bronx. We had visited each other. Our families knew each other. And as soon as I went down to Duke and went over to Chapel Hill during freshman orientation for a party, and we saw each other, we didn't speak. And, it was the rivalry. It was like all of a sudden, here we are, we're buddies. I'm sure you may have gone through it with Wayne, or maybe not, Gerald. Might have been a little different because you guys were teammates at one point. But here's this guy that I was like super cool with, and then we go to a party and we don't speak. And we don't speak. Maybe one time we spoke to each other during our 4 years.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was heated. We went to Chapel Hill, and of course they would go to, parties and things at Duke. But we didn't necessarily hang out, and it was heated. In terms of on the court, I think Leitner might have got into it with Montross one time, and I think Montross, might have been bleeding from the mouth. I mean, Leitner was Leitner. I know King Rice and Bobby used to go at it. King Rice was the senior point guard, was really strong and physical. And Bobby was young, and I know Bobby's freshman year, he kind of beat him up and just was real physical, and Bobby didn't play well against him. But other than that, I mean, it was the game that you looked forward to. It was the game that you had to win. I know for us, when we did win, I mean, there were a few times we'd win the game, and then we would go over to their campus.
To gloat,
and vice versa. Yeah, we'd go walk down Franklin Street, maybe try to go to a party if it was a Saturday game. A lot of times it was a weekday game, but we made sure if we won, we were going to win, and we're going to make the road trip over to Chapel Hill. And but it was fun. I mean, it was fun, and the crazy thing is that afterwards I got a chance to play with some guys from North Carolina, and they're actually really nice people, and
opposite to what you would think, right? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm joking when I say that, but I mean, I got to have some good friendships and good relationships with some of my teammates in the NBA who were Carolina guys, but I'll tell you this one story. You guys might have heard it, and it had to do with Leitner and Montross. And so in 91, the summer of 91, we're on the Pan American Games team. And the games are in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba. And Christian, Thomas Hill, and myself, along with Jimmy Jackson and Walt Williams and of course, Eric Montross. And so they had us staying in these apartments in this Olympic Village, and they had 3 bedrooms in each apartment. And we were assigned roommates. Mm-hmm. So in Havana, it was Leitner and Montross. So Christian refused to sleep in the same room as Eric.
No
so
way.
He took his mattress and put it out in the living room of the apartment and basically had the mattress on the floor for the entire 2 weeks that we were in Havana. And he refused to go in that room with Eric. Wow. And so...
What is it? Is that serious?
Oh, it was that. It was crazy. Now, obviously those two matched up with each other. And, when you're on those USA basketball teams, you kind of, your teammates, your friends, you hang out, and you got to know Eric a little bit. But it was just, that was the extreme. Like that was the environment. And Christian, as sort of the elder statesman, the leader, we kind of followed his lead. So I don't know if I would have moved my mattress out into the living room, but I think that pretty much, summarizes sort of the intensity of the rivalry back then.
Well, that set the tone for the team, I'm sure. Had to. But
no question.
You talk about being teammates with Christian Leitner and Bobby Hurley, and you guys are, to us, some of the younger guys, Duke legends, and so talk a little about playing during that time, being really, this is when Duke was, its hottest, right? Or first really becoming Duke, when you guys are winning national championships. And, we all know you're part of the biggest play really in college basketball history, being the assist man on a, 3/4 court pass to Leitner, who hit the jump shot. Talk a little bit about that time and playing with those guys and what your experience was.
Yeah, we as you guys obviously were during your time. We were so young, and I think we were just trying to win. I don't think we sort of ever thought that years later people such as yourself, a Dookie as well, would say those kind things about us, or that plays would be relived during March Madness. I think we realized, at least when I arrived, I think we realized we had a chance to be good. I don't think we thought we would be good right away. Mm-hmm. Bobby was a sophomore. I was a freshman. Christian was a junior. He was really good, of course. But that team that had lost the year before to Vegas and was embarrassed in the championship game lost 3 starting seniors, and so always kind of felt like and then of course UNLV was out there. So I felt when Christian was a senior, we'd have a chance maybe to be good. I really think Coach K believed and saw that we could win. And I remember the first day of practice my freshman year, he's like, "Hey, our goal, we're going to win a national championship this year." And I thought he was crazy because I'm thinking, he doesn't know UNLV's out there and they got everybody back last year's team. But I think we obviously won, and then the next year was just crazy, and that's when it kind of hit me that, like, wow, things are different when you win. And Leitner was such a star and was so beloved, and he was dating a supermodel, and Stephen King was coming to hang out with him, and it was just, it was like just crazy insanity. He was like one of People's 50 most beautiful, and he was a star, and we all were kind of, so it was kind of happening, and I don't think we could really sort of internalize what was happening, but it was just happening, and we were young, and with that comes, people who resent that, but I think we were somewhat insulated from that. It was before social media and all that, and I will say it's funny, and obviously, the Fab Five, and we had some great games and matchups with them. And, they did a documentary and sort of talked about their hatred for Duke and sort of how, how we were presented, I guess, to the public versus them. But, we didn't feel that way about them or really anybody else. We just felt that way about Carolina.
Right.
We didn't
right.
like Carolina. I mean, that was who we despised.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan was no different. No different than, and this is no disrespect to them, but it was no different than Florida State and Virginia. I mean, it was just another opponent that we felt like, okay, we should beat, we should take care of, we respect, but we should, handle our business. But like we just did not like Carolina, and Duke as a school is the largest employer in the city of Durham, and so within the school, and you might have experienced this too, Gerald. You're on campus, and people who work on campus, people who work in, the bookstore, the cafeteria, or wherever, like, they're Carolina fans.
Oh yeah.
And so they're talking trash to you. You're on campus, on your own campus, and you have people who work there at Duke but are diehard Carolina fans. And so, it was always kind of like no matter what you did, there was Carolina right there, like your big brother, or whatever, and you had to sort of try to outdo them. So that was what really drove us, was like, let's put Duke on the map. Let's and not on a national level, but just like in our own backyard. Like let's be relevant in the state of North Carolina or in Durham, with these Tar Heels. And and so anyway, but that's kind of a long answer to your question.
No, so you're saying basically that you guys started all the Duke hatred, basically. It started during your era because it exists. It definitely exists. And I live in North Carolina. I live in Charlotte. So you talk about like at the hospital or around Durham, you get to hear North Carolina fans. I hear it every day, man. And it's real, man. It's like, we got, people mostly say like Duke is, most people are from up north or wherever, New York, New Jersey, wherever it's at. But you get most of your Carolina fans down here, in the state. And so I hear it all the time, man. And it's annoying at sometimes, but it's fun, man. Like I won't say that I don't like going back and forth with Carolina fans, or when I see somebody, even now when I'm doing my treatment or my therapy and stuff, I got a guy working with Alan Tyson at Architect Sports here in Charlotte. He went to Carolina, so it's back and forth all the time. And it's a lot of fun. It really is.
No, it is. I mean, look, it's the best rivalry in all of college sports, and maybe in all sports in general. And people don't really appreciate the proximity and how close the schools are to each other. They don't. You talk about Carolina, a great state public school, one of the best in the country. You got a private school, Duke, that pulls from a lot of people outside of the state. I mean, all the different dynamics at play really sort of, lends itself or contributes to the rise. And then, the success of the programs. I mean, even before us, Duke, had been to some Final Fours and things of that nature. And obviously Carolina had a great run, even prior to the 90s. And so there's just history, and there's passion. I call it a cult. Like when I go when I go back to the Raleigh-Durham area, or even Charlotte, or, in the state of North Carolina, it's like, okay, I'm going back into a cult here. Let me just, people are going to remember things from 20 some odd years ago that just amaze me that they actually know, and they still recall, and with all that's happened, and so yeah, I mean, it just, as you guys I'm sure know and appreciate, it just, it just makes you glad that we were able to be a part of it, and whether you won championships or not, I mean, you felt that, and you're a part of that rivalry and that back and forth. And so even Carolina, I mean, they won this year, the championship, and, had a chance to broadcast that. Even with them winning, I'm still talking trash to Carolina folks, and
yeah.
And it's just part of the Duke Carolina intense rivalry.
We love it.
With me, I've got a few lines. Usually I'll know somebody will come up to me and be like, I'm a Duke fan, then I've got a kind of signature line I like to use. I'm not going to give it away on the podcast today, but I have a question for you. What is the difference between Coach K in the 90s and what you see from him today, if there's any difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the 90s, he obviously was younger. He had a great staff, Tommy Amaker, Mike Bray, who both have gone on and done a great job at their respective schools. But he was more of a micromanager. There was one voice in games, in film, in practice. Now, and having the opportunity to be around the program a little bit, sit in on practices, meetings, he really delegates. And he has former players, his entire staff, his former guys, and so he's even talked about how learning from the Olympic experience and being around the professional players and the professional coaches, that you don't want guys to sort of tune you out, and so he's not as hands-on. He lets Jeff Capel, he lets John Shire, Nate James, he lets them sort of take more of a lead, if you will. And it was almost amazing. Like, I sat and I'm watching Shire and Capel. I'm like, wow, these guys are running the practice,
Yeah.
But when Coach speaks and when he inserts himself, and like it really means something, and it's really strategic, I think. And so, I think that's also allowed him to have this kind of longevity. I mean, he'll be 71, I think, next month. And so I think he's not as hands-on. I think his philosophies have obviously the game has changed. I think, another thing, the generation of kids have changed,
Yeah.
and one of the things, his ability to sort of adapt and adjust and really connect and resonate with 16 to 19 to 20-year-old kids is really remarkable, because these kids today, they're a lot different than they were, in 1990 or 1985. And so, like coaches on Twitter and on social media, and every once in a while I'll post something on Instagram, and then he'll text me about my post. Now, we don't know what his handle is. He won't give that out.
He's got a ghost handle.
He's got a ghost handle, exactly. But he's figured it out. He's adapted, and I think he feels like he's a better coach from coaching, various teams and just through the years. I really admire that, and some people can be very rigid in their ways. And I think he's definitely, evolved and adapted through the years.
Yeah, just to add on to that, and, Coach K to me is one of the smartest guys that I know. And, to have former players in there, to me, is such an advantage, just because, he can teach them how to become coaches, some of the things that they have to do along the way, but he doesn't have to teach them what he wants his Duke players doing, because they are Duke players. He's not going to have to, the trust factor is 100% there. He knows that his guys, like Nate James, like there's no one more solid. John Shire's the same way. Cape's the same way. Nolan Smith. They're all Duke guys. He doesn't got to coach them like he would coach a player. So I think, he's smart in that way, and he's got it from, Nate is what played 10 years after you. Cape was probably, you played with Cape. Is that correct?
Cape was a freshman.
Yes.
He was a freshman in my senior year.
Right. So he's got guys from, your time all the way down to Nolan Smith, who left in 2011. So he's smart in the way he's, formed his staff, and it's helped him, over the years win five national championships to this point. So as I told you, you were one of my heroes growing up, and that's mostly seeing you as an NBA player. Talk a little bit about your NBA career, and what the things. I'm looking at this list, man. You got a lot of accomplishments and stuff. What was it like? Because that was mid-90s when you started, and around the time when Michael Jordan had kind of left, and you right away became this huge star. Talk about that a little bit, and some of the things you went through, and then we could talk a little bit about me and you playing against each other.
Yes, I have bad memories of that. No, I mean, I think, my career was sort of three parts. I mean, there was the early sort of Detroit years, then the injury and sort of the inability to stay healthy in Orlando, and then coming back later on and really having a great sense of satisfaction in a different role, but just really appreciating that second chance and, playing in Phoenix. But Detroit was a whirlwind. I mean, it was crazy. I came in the league and right away just had success. And, I remember maybe 10, 15 games into my rookie year, the first month, I was averaging 25 a game. And, I was just putting up better numbers in the NBA than I did in college. And I remember I was like stunned at how easy it was. Like, I was just like, here I am, 21 years old, pretty arrogant, I guess. And I'm just thinking, oh man, this is easy. And, eventually they scout you and they figure you out, and now it's not quite as easy. But, I think coming in and having success, and then I also think, playing on those Duke teams for 4 years, whether you loved Duke or hated Duke, you saw Duke.
Yeah.
You saw us, playing towards the end of the season, and so people were familiar with me and people knew me. And I think that also with sort of there being a void there when Jordan retired the first time, a lot was sort of, I guess, dumped in my lap. And so a lot of the marketing, and I, like Leitner, that first year had made the 50 most beautiful People magazine thing. But just all that happening was crazy. And, I just wanted to hoop. I just wanted to play ball, and I never really sort of aspired or desired that. It was just I wanted to play in the NBA. But it was good. I mean, the game was now the team was bad. I mean, my team initially was not good, and eventually we got things going. But when you're in the midst of it, I don't think you really don't appreciate it. You're just trying to get better. You're trying to win. You're just kind of in the moment, and so obviously, looking back now and reflecting and having gone through a lot of injuries, I appreciate it. Every once in a while, my daughter, who's 16, will go on, YouTube or pull up some old highlight clip, and she's like, "Dad, you actually were pretty good. You weren't always a scrub."
That ain't right. That ain't right, man.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was a great time, and it was, I can't even really describe it. It was good, and I was getting to a point where my last year in Detroit, I really felt like, as I added sort of the mid-range and started shooting the ball more from the perimeter, I just felt like I could do whatever I wanted. Like I had I was just sort of getting to that point where, I really truly felt like I was the best player in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was 26, 27, and, was looking forward to, the next 5, 6 years, 7 years of, hopefully being in my prime. But of course, injuries and that didn't happen. But yeah, Detroit was nothing but fond memories of that experience. And I just wish we could have won more. But on a personal level, it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this, man, as like I said, you've always been one of my guys that I've looked up to. So as we fast forward, right, me and Tyler, as we're getting, I'm 30. Tyler, you 30, 31? I'm taking a guess.
I'm 32. I got a little head start.
32. Well, 30. I'll be there in a couple
50.
years. As you get towards the back end of your career, you're playing with the Suns. You guys are, playoff team, and you guys are bringing new style faster, Mike D'Antoni, faster, shooting more threes, a little more spread out. And then, my question to you is, as we get older, how did you know it was the end? What kind of signs were you given, or were you given a sign that, you wanted to hang them up?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think in my case, missing those 4 years, right after my Detroit years, and being out, a good portion or almost all of those years, I had a desire, maybe unlike most, guys in their mid-30s, to still play and almost feel like I had something to prove. Now, I think physically I couldn't do certain things, as crazy as that sounds, because of the ankle. And I also think psychologically, I don't think, as you may or may not know, you have injuries. Obviously, the physical part, I think, will heal, but it's the mental and the emotional. And, having 4 surgeries and missing, you think about Derrick Rose and all that he went through, and not comparing injuries, but, I doubled that in terms of the length of time out.
Right.
And so I never came back with that sort of edge where I'm like, like I said, like I feel like I'm the best player on the court.
Right.
Whether I am or not, I felt that way. When I came back, I was just happy to be back.
Right.
Which wasn't a bad thing either. But I did have a great sense of satisfaction, and I think for me, when I got to Phoenix, they had a great medical staff, and I wanted to prove that I could still add value to a team, that I could still contribute, and that I could, I kept telling myself I'm going to make up for it on the back end. I'm missing these 4 years now, but I'm going to play till I'm 40. And I should have said 45, because at 40, my body broke down completely. But no, I mean, I just, I didn't, here's the thing, and for you guys, I mean, you guys are sort of still babies, but, I would encourage you to play as long as you can play. And, I think part of it is you can't accept the fact that, you're old, or you can't accept the fact that, you're supposed to be slowing down. You may have to do things different. You may have to eat differently, and, take care of your body and recover and get sleep and, all these different things. But so for me and playing with Steve Nash, who was a year or two younger than me, but we kind of held each other accountable. A lot of it's the thought process mentally. And so, I just take care of yourself, be disciplined, not accept the fact that you're 36, 37, 38. Although it was a little unfair that they put, a 38-year-old with one ankle on Kobe all those years when I was in Phoenix. That was a little unfair to the old guy. But you live for those challenges. And I think for me, the end was in L.A. I mean, when I got to the Clippers, I said, this is my last year. And then all of a sudden, I kind of lost, I didn't, it was just kind of like, this is it, and so, so I just play as long as you can play, enjoy all the experiences and the ups and the downs. But once it's over, it's over. And, I would gladly change positions with either one of you, to have the opportunity to just play again. And so I'm doing a lot of fun things and business and television and ownership and all that, but nothing replaces the feeling of playing, and not just playing professionally, but just being able to go to the YMCA and play. I can't do that anymore.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I your body tells you, your body talks to you, and sometimes as athletes, it takes us a while to listen. But when you listen to it, it'll tell you it's time.
Yeah.
And but you guys are babies, so you guys got a lot of years left.
Yeah, we hope we got a lot of years. And you mentioned your last year with the Clippers, right? So I'll tell you this story. I don't know if I ever told you this, but you mentioned to me one time. So you're playing with the Clippers. I want to say, was this 2014, 15?
2012, 2013.
Okay, so before then.
Yeah.
And
you were in Charlotte, right?
I was in Charlotte. Yep. This was probably maybe my third or fourth year. And, I know you're on the other team. I might have seen you before the game. We might have talked or something. But, like I've said too many times now, I looked up to you, my whole upbringing. So I said to myself before the game, I said, out of respect for Grant Hill and all the things that he's meant to me and all the things he's done, when I go up against Grant Hill, I am going to go as hard as I ever have. Right? So I remember I go in the game. I start the game hot. I think I had I was guarding Chauncey Billups, and he was this was towards the end of his career as well. So he wasn't the same Mr. Big Shot as he once was. So I was guarding him. He was just kind of playing the setup role, finding his teammates. Wasn't really looking to score. But then on the other end, I was showing my respect to him too. So I was getting him everything that I had, right? So I get him in foul trouble, and then he goes to the bench, and then you come on the floor, right? And
I remember, yes.
and then you came to check me, man, and I was like, I'm gonna, basically as a young player, man, I'm trying to show Grant Hill what I got. I'm not thinking about we're friends or, where you're at in your career. I was like, I'm thinking like, he's gonna go at me too. So like, I got to be at my best. And we went at it. We went at it for about at least maybe 6-7 minutes straight, man. And that was like some of the most fun I've ever had out on the court, man. Just like, regardless of who was scoring or whatever, but it was fun matching up with you. I'll say that for sure.
Well, it was fun because you were kicking my ass. And
I was doing okay.
Why it was fun for you. It was I do remember that. First of all, I appreciate the kind words and I've always enjoyed watching you play and spending time with you and have admired you as well, Tyler, from afar. I can say that now because you're no longer playing at Carolina, although you're always part of the family there. But yeah, no, you definitely. I remember. I couldn't believe Vinny Del Negro, our coach, put me in because I'm like, he's killing Chauncey, and now you're gonna put me on him. I've been sitting over here on the bench. I'm 40 years old, and you proceeded to kill me as well. And you talk about. And I was trying to go at you. I just didn't have anything. I was giving you everything I had. So in that case, I know you meant to be respectful, but maybe you should have been disrespectful.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I only know one way, man. I only know one way.
Gerald, before the pod started, I was telling Grant that about the first time that I played against him, it was my rookie year, and our coach comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, we're going to go big tonight. I want you to kill him on the rebounds. He gets a lot of offensive rebounds."
Right.
I'm like, "All right." So I'm excited. He tells me I'm starting. Then he tells me I'm guarding Grant Hill. And so he told me before the game, "I want you to go for every offensive rebound." So I'm running to the boards, and Grant Hill is just sprinting back, just getting, and I'm just exhausted trying to keep up with him. He's hitting mid-range after mid-range. And about 4 minutes into the game, Coach O'Brien pulls me, doesn't play me the rest of the game, just torched me from the get. So I didn't have the luck that she did, but I gave it everything I had.
Hey, man.
Yeah, no, well, the funny thing, I was a little bit younger then, so I still had some gas in the tank. But I know sometimes the best defense is good offense. And so the one thing I could do in Phoenix was run. And, I used to sometimes go to the jump circle, and people would look up and see some of the grays in my hair. And I could see them looking. And so I would say, okay, I'm going to try to beat them down the court every time. And so in Phoenix, whether, we didn't really care about rebounding, which is bad, because our whole thing was, look, whether they score or not, we're going to take the ball out and just ram it down your throat.
Right.
And so I said, you know what, let me just try to beat him with speed, because if I have to wrestle with Tyler, I'm going to be in for a long,
well, you did. I mean,
long
I remember
night.
that. I was so exhausted in those 3 minutes. Like, man, this guy, every time I run, I'm looking, where is he? He's all the way down at the other end of the court.
That's funny.
But hey, that's the only way I would score. Either layups or transition baskets. I don't think they went to me in the half court. So, but no, those were fun times.
Grant, I got one more question for you. What do you think about the current Duke team?
Wow. Well, they are extremely talented. Obviously Bagley is special. I like the size, kind of taking a page out of the Carolina playbook where we have two big guys in Bagley and Carter inside, and they seem to sort of coexist well and complement each other, as opposed to sort of the 4 around 1 that you typically see through the years at Duke. And then Grayson is playing great basketball as well. I think a couple of things. One, you can't teach experience, and there's been a few examples of teams that were young. Duke in 2015, Kentucky with Anthony Davis and that crew winning a championship. But the last 2 years, you had veteran teams who Villanova, Carolina, 2 years in a row getting back there. I think they have obviously the coaching, they have the talent. I think the ACC season is going to really help prepare them because it's not easy, as you guys know. But they have the talent. They have really good guard play, which you need, I believe, in college to win. And so I like this team. I love the talent. I'm just a little nervous as a Dookie with the youth and the fact that 4 freshmen are playing such significant roles. But if anyone can get them right and ready and prepared for March, it's Coach K. So I like their chances, and I think they have a chance to make a run at it and get there to the Final Four. But as you guys know, a lot of things have to work out perfectly, and we'll see if that happens.
So Grant, I'll ask you, man, as we talk about the brotherhood a lot at Duke and being connected to everyone and all the players you played with and current players you see now, who are some of your teammates or guys that you played with that you still keep in touch with today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd probably say, it's funny when we were in school, you kind of felt like we were so close, and all of us are going to be like super close for the rest of our lives, and sometimes life can get in the way. So with that said, probably Bobby, Tony Lang, who was my roommate, Kenny Blakeney, Leitner a little bit, not it's just some of the guys, just life. You don't see each other, but when you see each other, it's all good.
Right.
And so it's the great thing is that you can go. Tony Lang, who was my roommate and my closest friend on those Duke teams, he played in Japan and then coached in Japan, so he was essentially there for 10 years.
Right.
And was there year round. And so it's just hard when I'm still playing and he's working, the time change. And maybe Tyler's going through that a little bit now, being over there. But it was just hard at times to connect. And we'd go long periods of time, sometimes, 6 months to a year. But when we did connect, it was all good. And it was all love. And it was like, we didn't skip a beat. So Jeff Capel, Jeff Capel's one, Chris Collins. And so, the great thing was whether I played with those guys or, the guys that played before me or guys such as yourself, Gerald, who played after. I know the same things at Carolina with their sort of strong fraternity there. You feel like, we're all family, and we all share that common bond. We played for Coach K. We played at Duke. And so we're part of that brotherhood. So when we watch these guys, there's a sense of pride and wanting to see them do well, wanting them to, continue on, with the legacy. And I'm sure at Carolina, I know at Carolina, it's the same. It's the same sort of thing. And so that's what's special because I know there are guys who have played in the league who don't really have connection or any kind of connection or engagement with their school and their program. And there's been coaching changes and new regimes or whatever. And even Roy Williams, who, obviously was at Kansas for some years, but he understands what Carolina basketball is and I'm sure still keeps guys connected who coached as an assistant coach, and even guys who were there when he wasn't there. And so I think all three of us are fortunate that we have that. We can always come home. We can always go to our respective homes and it'd be all good.
No, it's absolute, man. And, you talk about, maybe the differences between Duke and Carolina. One thing that, we have in common for sure is that brotherhood, family type aspect, man. Being able to, stay connected with the guys you played with and still have that relationship, with some of the younger guys and the current guys. But, for sure, Grant, we asked you a lot of questions, man. You're very gracious for staying on here for a long time with us, man, and giving the people your valued perspective on the game of basketball and Duke UNC, man. So we appreciate you you coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you, Gerald and Tyler, and it was an honor and a privilege. I'm just excited that we all can coexist. Isn't this beautiful?
It is beautiful, man. And, as you go on, man, hey, good luck with your golf swing. I told you, man, you got to get out there, man. Swing it. Get out there and play. Put the time in, man.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to initially say that as a way to get my revenge, I would meet you on the golf course. But you're really good on the golf course, so maybe we'll compete in ping pong or pool or something that I'm, have a chance to beat you in after you destroyed me there. My last year with the Clippers.
Hey, I'll take you up on that, man. I'll take you up on that. All right, everybody. Grant Hill, thanks a lot. What a great guy Grant Hill is. Always revered as one of the best guys, not just college or NBA, but just basketball in general. Tyler, what'd you think, man?
Man, I thought it was great, especially getting some insight on, how kind of Duke got to where it is today, especially from one of the guys that was there early on and had a great NBA career. A lot of good stuff in that.
All right, that wraps up episode 4 of the Tobacco Road podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in this week. Make sure to follow us on both Instagram and Twitter. It's at Tobacco Road Pod. I'm both on Instagram and Twitter, and it's G_Hender09. Follow me. Listen to what I got to say. Look at my pictures. Do whatever you want. Also, on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, SoundCloud, you can get the episode. Send it to your friends. Give us a review. Give us that 5-star rating, baby. We need that. This is a big deal. Tobacco Road Podcast. We appreciate you. Happy New Year to everyone. We will see you next week.